We're at Flushing Main Street Station, here to start the most culturally diverse line in the MTA, the 7 train. Located in the heart of Queens' Chinatown, it's one of the biggest bus hubs in the entire system, and it just barely cracks the top 10 most used stations. It's mainly due to the fact that east of here is a bit of a transit desert, and there are multiple proposals to extend the 7 train that won't happen for a bit. But from the Q15A and B, the Q65 to the Q44 Select bus, there are a lot of buses here. We start our journey with the escalators at the Grand East entrance. There are interesting designs for the entrances here, and there's also a huge artwork on the wall that you can see as you enter the station. You can also see the architecture itself, pretty cool. Flushing Main Street is famous for its 3 tracks, including Track M, where doors open on both sides. Being a terminal, you get a very fun perspective of the train head-on. And yes, the buffer is there, and there's also a sign that warns operators to not open doors on both sides on the outer tracks. But when the outer tracks are freed, you can see the nice tile work on the walls. Now, remember when I said that this was the 10th busiest station in the system? Well, it really shows. Also, the station looks a little weird when there are no trains at any platforms, and you actually realize the platform is slightly curved. One last jaunt to the buffers where we see these weird columns, and then we go to the original entrance of this station. It's a lot more crowded than the newer entrance, and there's also one of the few ticket booths that's not surrounded by any walls. Also, don't forget about the Long Island Railroad station that's adjacent here, but doesn't actually have an integrated connection, so you do have to walk. We board the westbound 7 train where we will immediately go outside via the portal, in preparation to cross the Flushing Creek. However, heading to the garage at the Skyview shops nearby will let you see a very fun perspective of the 7 train crossing the river and going into the tunnel. But yeah, we cross over the Flushing Creek, and with Citi Field in view, we head to Mets-Willets Point station. However, I don't think I should talk about this station, as someone not into sports, so let's hear from my good friend DJR about this station, since he's actually a Mets fan.
Hello everyone. As you enter Willets Point heading westbound, make sure to spot the abandoned portion of the platform. This station used to be named Willets Point Boulevard, and a couple signs that reference this name are still here today. There is a lot of infrastructure to manage crowds here, like the large ramps that go up to the westbound platform, the special events exit on the eastbound platform, and the platforms here generally being wider than most other stations. There is also this sign that suggests fans to move down the platform for more seats. Although the larger scale design here is perfect for game days, when there are no sports fans, the station feels oddly empty. This station's unique layout means that just like at Flushing, doors can open at both sides here. Despite being opposite of the Mets, the southern entrance is the more grander of the two, and it leads you onto this wooden pedestrian bridge. It allows for a direct view down to Corona Yard, the 7 lines maintenance facility. Finally, at the eastern end of the platform, you can see the various switches as the main line prepares to merge with the yard tracks. And now it's time to leave. Don't forget, let's go Mets!
And the Corona Yard shenanigans continue as we head into 111th Street Station. This is a 5-track station, and the Revenue Express track rises above the other tracks in a stellar display. The middle 2 tracks down below are for yard moves, and you can see at the eastern end of the platform part 2 of the interlockings that lead to Corona Yard. We check out the closed signal staircase and head on to Junction Boulevard station. And it's the overpass that makes this station shine. And it's more modern and is actually only accessible via elevators. The staircase you see is an emergency exit only. Heading up to the overpass itself, it makes itself a cool place to watch trains, especially arriving on the express track. Back down on platform level, you can see the other elevator from that overpass, which leads to the street. But remember, there are also staircases that go down in the traditional way, and they lead to this mezzanine uniquely sporting brick floors. Appreciate the sheer crowds this station gets like many other stations on the 7, and then head to the very end, which has great opportunities for rail fanning. By the way, the overpass actually has an unused room that no one goes into, and it's actually for structural support reasons, as it'd be lopsided if it did not exist. We head on to 90th Street Elmhurst Avenue station. There's gonna be a lot of these numerical stations that have a random named street attached to the name, but this is the only one where it still exists. But it's yet to have been renovated, and personally, I think this station really needs one, even though I do like the red in the design. But there aren't very many left of these pre-renovated elevated stations in the system, so watch out for the telltale signs like the half-height fences and the beige indented walls. This station does have a few things of its own, like these strange glossy panels, and down on the mezzanine, this interesting black and white noise pattern on the walls. By the way, only one of the two staircases leads to a free cross-under. And then on to 82nd Street Jackson Heights Station. Just like at 111th, where I didn't mention it, it's a tale of one shiny new platform and one platform still under construction. But let's go back to a time when the old platform was still open, and we have the massive 82. Yeah, they removed the 82 with a renovation, and when the Manhattan-bound platform reopened, we all had a week to see the 82 for the last time. On the bright side, the station itself looks a lot better compared to before, and even the entrances got touched up quite a bit, despite the blue construction wall still being visible for now. Our next stop is 74th Street Broadway Station, and it's a huge transfer point for both trains and buses. On the bus side of the spectrum, you can see the Q47, the Q32, and of course the Q70 LaGuardia Link, the only bus in the entire system to have its own livery. Meanwhile, the Q33 and Q49 buses have their own bus bays, and I really gotta give props to the roof here. Between the unique-looking lights and these stained glass windows, the mezzanine is really one of the most beautiful in the entire system. And look at a view from further away, it's just gorgeous. Heading up to the 7 train, and you'll notice that the platforms have actually been renovated, ahead of most other stations. But remember the IND down below. There are 2 transfers. One of them is not the one I'd recommend taking due to the construction, but it involves these escalators at the extreme western end of the platform. The second one is via the best entrance, the grand entrance. And this transfer is notoriously crowded. You can see the swaths of people rushing downstairs. Finally, this jumbo-sized departure board, which you don't see anywhere else. And temporarily, it's west of 74th Street where 7 express trains won't go express. Next up, 69th Street. Nice. What's not so nice is the state that this station is in, because of course, it's another station yet to be renovated, and another one that badly needs it. Physically, it's also very close to 74th Street Broadway Station, and it's actually the least used station on the 7 line. At least you can see the BQE from here. Pretty interesting. And then the station I filmed in the dark, Woodside 61st Street Station. We've seen our fair bit of construction so far, but this station is the mother of it all, with the once 3-track station being turned into 2 side platforms separated by those blue construction walls. You blame the 7 Express for not doing its job here until you peek over the window. It does create some interesting situations though, like this countdown clock given a little space, and this name sign being one of 2 to stay. The mezzanine itself is pretty crowded, especially under these construction times. There is some cool looking temporary signage though. The Long Island Railroad is here and visible, and unlike at Mets and Flushing, there's actually a well-integrated transfer. This may not be secrets of the Long Island Railroad, but there is this unique red countdown clock. Along with Atlantic Avenue Barclays Center, I'm pretty sure this is the only room that has both a Long Island Railroad countdown clock and an MTA countdown clock, and the same thing goes for ticket machines. Our next stop is 52nd Street Lincoln Avenue Station. Is that a mold infestation? But yes, we are at the last station that badly needs a renovation. It may be one of the more underrated stations, but what I'm interested in is the 53rd Street exit. It may be a tiny exit, but both sides used to be connected via the abandoned mezzanine, which you can see from street level. There's something you can peek through, and I don't know what we're seeing here. This just feels like 7th Avenue all over again. That quirky Q32 bus is still here, and there's also this closed staircase. Looking westbound, and you can see the curve and incline between 46th Street and 52nd Street stations, and it's a nice spot to railfan. Also, the 7 line is probably one of the best sunset lines in the system. But on the topic of that curve, go to 46th Street and it's even better. The next 3 stations are clones of each other, but they have a very interesting design to them. They're all on the concrete viaduct, and they have a more reinforced look to them than other elevated stations. It's actually similar to Westchester Square Station from the 6th line. Yes, 46th Street has this thing, and 40th Street has this odd sign, and of course they all have subnames that don't exist anymore. 33rd Street is my favorite station due to the curve. It's even better than 46th Street. 33rd Street gives you a good idea of what these viaduct stations are like. These exits are down these spiral staircases with white tiling. They're encased in the larger pillars. The architectural beauty of the viaduct in the median of Queens Boulevard is clear here, but turning back the clock, and you see that this line was here long before a lot of buildings. It looks a little weird. I mean, it is sort of the reality for a lot of these old elevateds in the outer boroughs. With the curve to the west, the viaduct ends, and you can see the empty space underneath. For yet another time, we cross the Long Island Railroad. This time, it's over Sunnyside Yard, so you'll also see some New Jersey Transit, and even sometimes an Amtrak train as we're above the Northeast Corridor. Continuing to look out the right-hand window, we see the Astoria Line tracks where the N and W trains run, curve to meet with us. Below to the lower level for the cross-platform transfer with the N and W trains at one of the most complex stations in the system, Queensboro Plaza. Yes, it's the only place in the entire system where there's a cross-platform transfer between the A and B divisions. Consequentially, these are the only platforms in the system that have more than one type of countdown clock, and they are not compatible internally. So this is the 7 train's sole connection to the rest of the system. But why is all of this the way it is? Back when the station first opened, there was no stacked layout, but instead there was a whole other set of platforms to the north. And this was the unique case where BMT and IRT interlined. So trains from the Broadway line could go to Flushing, and trains from the Steinway tubes could go to Astoria. The station was renovated, the north tracks were removed, the cross-platform transfer happened, and the interlining ended. By the way, since A Division and B Division trains are slightly different lengths, you can see that the Astoria line gets a little bit extra platform. And speaking of which, the 7 line is the only line that runs 11-car trains. This works because all the platforms were built to fit BMT trains. The upper level is out in the open and allows you to get some really good rail fanning shots. You can also see the large amount of tall buildings in the area. On the lower level, there's these walls, which have a different design on the 7 train side compared to the N and W train side. There's also this cool looking bench with a light above it. We check out the awkward looking sign, and then we head to the exit, where there's actually an overpass that takes you over Queens Plaza to the northern side. We've made it to Court Square. This station used to be called 45th Road Courthouse Square on the 7, but when the 3 stations merged, it just became Court Square. Speaking of which, we do have a transfer here to the E, G, and M trains, all IND, but actually 2 separate stations not intended to be connected. Since it's IND, the 7 train is the only above-ground line at this station. Just like at Queensboro Plaza, you can see the modern tall skyscrapers here. And just like 74th Street Broadway, this station's been renovated ahead of other Flushing line stations. But let's leave the 7 train platforms and head down the escalator in the modern transfer to the E, G, and M trains. It's one of the coolest escalators in the system. But of course, we will be ending this video with the coolest. Between Court Square and Hunters Point Avenue, you can once again see the Long Island Railroad. This includes the Long Island Railroad station called Hunters Point Avenue, which is mostly served by diesel trains. And then we get to the 7 trains Hunters Point Avenue station. Since Flushing Main Street, it's the first underground station. Just barely. Yes, by literal inches, this station's underground, and it gets quite the natural light at this end of the platform. This station actually has pretty tall ceilings, and on the mezzanine level you can see a sign that has evidence that there used to be trains running to Astoria from here. There's also yet another abandoned staircase. I think this station's pretty cool, but we're done here. Vernon Boulevard-Jackson Avenue, or just Vernon-Jackson Avenues on the tile work, is a short distance away. For most of the platform length, there's a wall that blocks your view of the other platform, but you can go to the eastern end to see the other platform if you really wanted to. The columns form into arches at one part of the platform, which looks pretty cool, and this isn't really seen anywhere else in the system. This station may look and feel like one of the quietest stations on the 7, but just to the west you'll be going at speed through the Steinway tubes. They are thinner than most other tunnels due to the fact that they were originally built with trolleys in mind. However, only a few test trolleys ran under the East River before it was sold to the IRT, and the 7 train was made to run under it. As a consequence, you can't have employees walking through the tunnel without closing service altogether. We then head to the cavernous island platform at Grand Central, quite the contrast from the Lexington Avenue line. Notable here is the lighting in the station, and there's also this random sign that mentions the Javits Center, which 34th Street Hudson Yards no longer mentions. There are some unique signage types here, most famously the metal signs on the walls, but also there's this slanted signage hanging from the ceiling. The eastern end of the platform actually has an exit to 3rd Avenue that doesn't connect to any other part of Grand Central. It's also here where you can see 7 trains entering at very high speeds. On the eastern end, there's construction, once again for a grander Central, and you can peek through the construction walls again. The architecture on this platform is unlike any other, and it's fun to explore the quietest part of America's 3rd busiest railway station. I should also mention, since 2023, the Long Island Railroad's here. What is that, the 6th time? We then head to 5th Avenue-Bryant Park, the only station on the 7 with the experimental platform barriers. This may be the 7 train's least interesting station in Manhattan, but it's the only station to just be called 5th Avenue. Kinda strange for such a well-known New York street. Yeah, I'm stretching things there because Bryant Park isn't mentioned in the announcements, and 5th Avenue, 53rd Street, and 59th Street exist as well, but there really isn't a lot about this station. The New York Public Library is here though, and it's even mentioned on the signage. Oh, and the 6th Avenue line. And then we head to Times Square, the former terminal of the 7. Only one secret allowed, there's way too many lines here. Did you know that for each of the 4 sets of platforms, Flushing, Shuttle, Broadway, and 7th Avenue, there's a different square mosaic? Where we are on Flushing has TS, the 7th Avenue line just has T, the Broadway line has 42, and the shuttle platforms, well, they don't have any. We're about to head on to 34th Street Hudson Yards Station, the extension that opened in 2015 being the first new station in over 25 years. However, there was a planned second station at 10th Avenue that never happened. At long last, we head to 34th Street Hudson Yards, the new last stop on the 7. It's actually not the westernmost station in the system, but if Manhattan pointed perfectly north, then it actually would be. The tile work on the walls isn't like the 2nd Avenue subway, but it's got its own brand of modernism. There's also this random 24-hour 7-segment display clock that's just here. The staircase dynamics are as cool as ever, and you get some pretty good views down below to the platforms. And when you think of long mezzanines, you think of IND, but this is an IRT station, so interesting how long the mezzanine is. However, it is time to leave the station steps. You can take the long escalators, vertigo-inducing since the tiles are parallel to the escalators and not pointing directly downward, or you can take the only inclinator in the entire subway system. It is unique, but be warned, it's pretty slow. In the circular faregate room, there's this beautiful art installation on the ceiling. You can also see it when heading down from the surface on the escalators. There are many things to check out at Hudson Yards, like the nice park right outside the station, the Javits Center, which the station was originally going to be named after, and the Vessel Thing, which recently reopened. And of course, the actual Hudson Yards, where you can see the Long Island Railroad. But wait, Flushing, Mets, Woodside, Sunnyside, Hunters Point, Grand Central, Hudson Yards? That's 7 places where you can see the Long Island Railroad on the 7. Going back to the park, and it's a pretty tranquil place, but it is kind of funny to see the elevator just there in the park. But what I consider the best entrance in the entire system is the grand glass canopy that welcomes you to the 7 line, even though we are leaving.